One of the most binge-worthy series on Disney Plus right now arguably is The Punisher. You know, that series that ran on Netflix for a few years and featured Jon Bernthal as Frank Castle, a vigilante who uses lethal methods to fight crime and delivers a superb performance. If you haven't seen it yet, trust me, you're missing out. But today, we won't be discussing Jon Bernthal's Punisher. Instead, we'll be discussing a real-life figure who has earned a similar nickname, known as the Punisher himself, and not for his movie roles. It's former president of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte. Duterte, born on March the 28th, 1945, served as the leader of the Philippines from 2016 to 2022. And let me tell you, his story and reputation are as compelling and controversial as any TV anti-heroes. Let's take a quick dive into Rodrigo Duterte's backstory. But before we do that, make sure to like and subscribe for more. Duterte grew up in a politically active family. His father served as governor of Davao, and his mother wasn't one to shy away from a cause. She was a key figure in the people power movement, the same one that toppled the authoritarian regime of Ferdinand Marcos, bringing democracy back to the Philippines. Duterte's journey began academically. He graduated with a degree in political science from Lyceum of the Philippines University in 1968, followed by a law degree from San Beda College in 1972. By 1977, he was working in Davao City's prosecutor's office, a role that set the stage for his career in public service. In 1986, he was appointed vice mayor of Davao, and by 1988, he had won the mayoral seat, a position he held with strong public support, getting re-elected twice over the next decade. Term limits forced him to step down in 1998, but he wasn't done yet. He moved into national politics with a seat in the Philippines House of Representatives. By 2001, he was back in Davao as mayor. This back and forth between political roles became a pattern. When term limits prevented him from running for mayor in 2010, he took on the vice mayor position, with his daughter Sarah stepping in as mayor. In 2013, he returned to his mayoral post, this time with his son Paulo, known as Pulong, serving as vice mayor. Over his two-decade tenure as mayor of Davao City, Rodrigo Duterte took the city from a hotspot of crime to what many now consider one of the safest areas in Southeast Asia. But his methods? Let's just say they were unconventional. His fierce approach to crime earned him the nickname, the Punisher, and it's a title he wore proudly. Human rights groups like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch accused him of being behind more than 1,000 extrajudicial killings. Rather than brush off these accusations, Duterte leaned into them, openly praising the death squads who carried out these brutal tactics, with what looked like official immunity. Then there was Duterte's stance on the Spratly Islands, a touchy foreign policy issue for the Philippines. One day, he'd be talking about a diplomatic solution with China. The next, he'd boast about riding a jet ski to the disputed islands to plant a Filipino flag himself. His allies must have been holding their breath every time he spoke on the matter. Love him or hate him, Duterte never shied away from bold moves. On May 9, 2016, Filipinos turned out in huge numbers. Nearly 80% of eligible voters showed up to make their voices heard, and when the votes were counted, Rodrigo Duterte emerged as the clear choice, winning almost as many votes as his two closest rivals combined. Fresh off his landslide victory, Duterte wasted no time making bold promises. He pledged to bring back the death penalty, abolished in 2006, and even joked about fattening the fish in Manila Bay with the bodies of criminals. Dark humor? Definitely. No surprise some media compared him to then-presidential candidate Donald Trump. In June 2016, Duterte delivered a televised address that shocked many. He encouraged vigilantism, promising rewards to anyone who killed a drug dealer. The nickname, the Punisher, wasn't just for show. By June 30th, he was officially inaugurated as the 16th president of the Philippines, succeeding Benigno Aquino III. Duterte broke new ground in several ways. He was the first president from Mindanao, the oldest to take office, and the first to have worked across all three branches of government. Once in office, Duterte got to work making sweeping changes that, despite the controversy, had a long-term impact on the Philippines. Perhaps the most ambitious was the Build, Build, Build program. Launched on April 18, 2017, this massive infrastructure initiative aimed to cut poverty, drive economic growth, and ease congestion in Metro Manila. As part of Duterte's vision for a golden age of infrastructure, the program planned to raise public infrastructure spending from 5.4% of the nation's GDP in 2017 to 7.4% by 2022, setting the stage for a new era of development. In 2017, Duterte's administration took a bold new approach to infrastructure funding, moving away from the public-private partnerships used by previous leaders. Instead, they leaned heavily on government revenues and official development assistance, especially from allies like Japan and China. By October 2019, they had invited the private sector back to the table to help secure additional funding. In November 2019, the administration expanded its ambitious Build, Build, Build program, increasing the number of flagship infrastructure projects from an initial 75 to 100, then 104, and finally 112 by 2020. This broadened the program's focus beyond transportation and construction to include health, IT, and water infrastructure, all with an eye toward driving economic growth and aiding the country's recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Among the standout projects were the Subic-Clark Railway, the North-South Commuter Railway linking New Clark City and Laguna, the Metro Manila Subway, the expanded Clark International Airport, the Mindanao Railway, and the extensive Luzon Spine Expressway network. By April 2022, 12 of these flagship projects were completed, while 88 others were well underway, handed over to the next administration for completion. Between June 2016 and July 2021, the accomplishments were impressive. 29,264 kilometers of roads, 5,950 bridges, 11,340 flood control projects, 222 evacuation centers, 150,149 school classrooms, and 653 COVID-19 facilities were built. In healthcare, Duterte also enacted sweeping reforms. In February 2019, the Universal Health Care Act made all Filipinos automatically enrolled in government health insurance, widening access to medical services. The Philippine Mental Health Law established a national policy to strengthen mental health services and protect patients' rights. And with the HIV and AIDS Policy Act passed in December 2018, HIV and AIDS healthcare became more accessible to those in need. In December 2019, Duterte signed a groundbreaking law that established malasakit centers, essentially one-stop shops for healthcare needs across the Philippines. By May 2022, 151 of these centers were up and running, providing convenient access to a range of health services under one roof. Duterte also made big moves to protect public health. He issued executive orders banning smoking in public areas and regulating the use of firecrackers and pyrotechnics. He launched a national feeding program aimed at undernourished children in public schools and expanded health services for pregnant women and infants, focusing on the crucial first 1,000 days, as recommended by the World Health Organization. In 2017, Duterte rolled out a ₱1 billion medical assistance program to provide free medicine, prosthetics, assistive devices, radiology, and chemotherapy for indigent citizens. Funded under the president's socio-civic projects, this initiative made critical healthcare more accessible to those in need. He also introduced price caps on select medicines and, in December 2021, issued an executive order to further regulate the prices of drugs for major health conditions, making essential treatments more affordable. Duterte's influence extended to education as well. In August 2017, he signed a landmark law granting free tuition at all state universities and colleges. He championed various initiatives, from establishing alternative learning systems and free technical vocational education to ensuring inclusive education for disabled learners. He also set up medical scholarships, teacher scholarship programs, and career guidance for secondary schools, culminating in the launch of the National Academy of Sports at New Clark City. In education, Duterte's administration took bold steps to reshape the curriculum. Laws were signed to reintroduce good manners and right conduct, along with values education in the K-12 program, instilling foundational values in students. He also enabled foreign universities to offer degree programs in the Philippines through transnational higher education, integrated labor education into college curricula, and introduced studies on energy-efficient, sustainable technology. Additionally, Filipino Sign Language was declared the national sign language and added as a subject for deaf students. By the end of Duterte's term, nearly 2 million students across 220 higher education institutions had benefited from free tuition from 2018 to 2019 to 2021 to 2022. In that same period, over 364,000 students received support through tertiary education subsidies and the Tulong Dunong program, helping to ease financial burdens and improve access to higher education. On the tax front, the Duterte administration rolled out a sweeping tax reform initiative. The first major step, the Tax Reform for Acceleration and Inclusion Train Law, made a significant impact by exempting individuals earning up to 250,000 pesos annually from income tax. To balance this, the law raised excise taxes on items like vehicles, sugary drinks, petroleum products, and tobacco, funneling the additional revenue into the government's ambitious infrastructure projects. The second phase of Duterte's tax reform, known as the Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises Act, or CREATE Act, aimed to keep the economy competitive by lowering the corporate income tax from 30% to 25%, hoping to attract more investment and promote fiscal stability. To support the Universal Health Care Act, Duterte's administration increased sin taxes on tobacco, vapor products, alcohol, and e-cigarettes, both to raise healthcare funds and to discourage smoking and drinking-related health issues. A tax amnesty law signed in February 2019 offered delinquent taxpayers a one-time chance to clear their tax dues affordably, providing a revenue boost for infrastructure and social projects. Duterte also signed a law placing a 5% tax on gross gaming revenues from offshore gaming operators and approved tax exemptions for small-scale miners on income and excise taxes for gold sales to the central bank. In trade, on September 2, 2021, Duterte endorsed the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, an ASEAN-led free trade deal involving 10 ASEAN nations along with Australia, China, Japan, Korea, and New Zealand. The agreement, however, hit a delay in the Senate, which wanted further safeguards for the country's agricultural sector and preferred to wait for the incoming Marcos administration's review. In transportation, Duterte's administration pushed to modernize public transport with a 2017 program aimed at reducing pollution and enhancing safety. The initiative phased out jeepneys and other public vehicles over 15 years old, requiring them to have Euro 4 compliant or electric engines, and encouraged small operators to merge into larger cooperatives or groups with a minimum of 15 vehicles. A separate program launched in 2019 provided training and scholarships to help public transport drivers adapt to these changes. In his fourth State of the Nation address in July 2019, Duterte took a strong stance on clearing public roads of obstructions. He directed then Department of the Interior and Local Government Secretary Eduardo Año to suspend any mayors or governors who didn't comply. Año gave local leaders 60 days to clear roads and sidewalks of illegal structures and parked vehicles, making it clear there'd be consequences for inaction. By October 2019, thanks to the efforts of provincial, city, and municipal governments, 6,899 roads across the country had been cleared. However, 97 local government units failed to meet the deadline and had to explain their non-compliance. Duterte also pushed for more bike-friendly infrastructure, leading to the creation of protected bike lanes in major cities. By the end of his term, these networks spanned 563 kilometers in Metro Manila, Metro Cebu, and Metro Davao. In addition, he extended driver's license validity from 3 to 5 years and approved a 20% fare discount for students using public transportation. In April 2022, Duterte allowed a bill supporting the development of the electric vehicle industry to pass into law. His Build program resulted in impressive infrastructure growth by 2022, with 40,080 kilometers of roads, 6,854 bridges, 579 tourism ports, and 248 airport projects completed. As for agriculture, while the sector saw 6.3% growth in Duterte's first year, reversing a decline under the previous administration, challenges remained. Despite efforts to revitalize farming, it continued to struggle, even as other areas experienced growth. In 2018, inflation sparked a major shift in the country's rice industry. To address the rising costs, the Rice Tariffication Law, RTL, was passed in 2019, ending the National Food Authority's monopoly on rice imports. Instead of placing strict import limits, the law introduced a 35% tariff on rice, with the revenue funneled into a Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund aimed at supporting farmers. Although the law faced some pushback, business groups rallied behind it, and soon, rice prices stabilized. Later that same year, President Duterte empowered the Department of Agriculture to use the tariff funds to provide direct cash assistance to small farmers, a much-needed lifeline. At the same time, Duterte signed another significant reform, easing decades-old restrictions on agricultural patents from the Commonwealth era. This move made land titles easier to trade and allowed for more efficient land management. The Sagip-Saka Act, also signed in 2019, focused on boosting farmers' and fishermen's incomes by promoting enterprise development and facilitating direct transactions with consumers. Efforts to make organic produce certification more affordable and accessible were also part of the initiative. In 2020, Duterte took steps to encourage young people to pursue agriculture by offering new graduates up to 3 hectares, about 7.4 acres of land. This was aimed at preventing a shortage of farmers and securing the future of the industry. The government also revived the Kadiwa program, originally launched by President Ferdinand Marcos, which allowed farmers to sell their products directly to consumers, helping to lower prices and improve their livelihoods. Duterte continued his support for the agricultural sector with a law in February 2018 that provided free irrigation for farmers owning up to 8 hectares of land. By December 2021, this initiative benefited over 1 million farmers. In February 2021, a law was passed to create a trust fund for coconut farmers, and by June 2022, an executive order was issued to implement the Coconut Farmers and Industry Development Plan. This plan enabled the release of 75 billion pesos of cocoa levy funds, which the Supreme Court had declared as state property, to further support the coconut industry. In 2019, the Philippine government faced a major setback when African swine fever hit the country, forcing strict animal quarantine measures and a ban on pork imports. Between 2020 and 2021, over 3 million hogs were culled to contain the outbreak, leading to a pork supply shortage and skyrocketing prices. To combat this, President Duterte took action by temporarily lowering import tariffs on pork for a year and launching a repopulation program to restore the hog population. By July of 2021, the Duterte administration had made significant strides in improving the country's infrastructure. Under the Build program, they completed 2,025 kilometers of farm-to-market roads and 94.99 kilometers of farm-to-mill roads, making it easier for farmers to transport goods. These are just a few of the landmark changes during Duterte's presidency. Love him or hate him, it's clear that Duterte stirred up some serious change in the Philippines. Whether those changes were a refreshing breeze, or more like the unpredictable monsoons and harsh harmattan winds, well, that's still up for debate.